If you have your Bibles, I'm going to invite you to find the book of Psalms, Psalm 139. While you're looking that up, I'm just going to talk for a second about one other thing that I'm really, really thankful for, and that is this past holiday season with our Christmas Eve service. I was really excited about that at about 2 or 3 or 4 different levels. First of all, got to see the acting abilities of some folks in the congregation. Not just the acting abilities, but like I said, we benefited from the writing abilities. So, Jerry had written up the play, the little skit that they did, and then we had all the guitars. How many were here for that, for the Christmas Eve service, Okay, how many were the really unfaithful Philistines here? No, I'm joking. But it was really, really cool. Also, we had 5 guitars or something like that, that they kind of did a special with that. So it was really, really a neat time. But I was also thrilled, not only as far as the service itself, but I had invited some folks that don't really do church, okay? And I was really excited because I think about 3 or 4 different families that I had invited came, and they made a point to share with me that they really enjoyed the service. And a couple of them it's been 3 years in the making, okay, as far as just kind of keep building in and try to build some relationship and some connection. And so I was thrilled when I was visiting with one at the post office, and they said, yeah, we came to the service. And I said, I didn't even know you were there. They said, yeah, we're there. We kind of got there just a little bit after everything started and stuff. And so I said, well, I'm sorry. I would have had a chance or taken time to come and talk with you. And they said, well, no, you're talking to other people and shaking hands. And I said, well, that's what I do. I talk and shake, and that's what I do. But you know what? And then I thought, yeah, it didn't take much. Now listen to me. It didn't take much to invite them, to just make a simple reach. Would you like to come? Be my guest. And the one that I had been working for 3 years I've been working. And she was telling me about that, and I said, well, you can always come back. And she said, maybe I should. So I don't know where that's going to lead. But I know this, if she hadn't been invited, she probably wouldn't have been there. It isn't hard. Okay. That having been said, we're going to go on. Did you get your Bibles? Do you have it? It's Psalm 139, okay? Put your finger there. I will eventually get to it, I promise. But I'm going to talk about how many here play those phone games. You know what I'm talking about? Words with friends and trivia, something or other, and all that sort of stuff. How many of you are really, really gracious and great-hearted people who are married to people who play the phone game? Okay? I'm one of the second part of the people. I'm one that's one of those gracious, great-hearted people that's married to someone who plays the phone game. So there was Words with Friends, and there was Trivia Crack, and there's others untold that I know. But I think the latest one is, there's one where you kind of do it like a crossword deal, right? I don't know what it's called, Jen, but Jen always asks me the hard ones, and then I never know, and so she goes on without me. But the latest that I know of is the Word of the Day. And I guess it's sort of like enriching your word power or something. So you kind of have your word of the day, and they'll pop it up there for you, and you have to kind of guess, am I right, what it means. And so I've been brought in on a couple of these. Stelliferous was one. Any guesses on that? Me neither. So it means starry, right? Or bright, because you got stellar in there. So I figured that much out. And then there was another one, and it was called clinkant. And I had no idea on that, but that means like tinsely, right? Something like that. So, and I got to thinking about the words of the day, and I really don't want to go on with more of those because I find it kind of boring. But I thought that I would talk to you instead about a word of the month. And particularly, maybe what would be our word of the month here. And I would offer to you the word of the month for us here would be grow. Didn't say it was going to be a hard one. The word of the month is going to be grow. I want to talk, through this month, I want to look at some things about growing, because usually when people come to their resolutions and stuff, it's usually those who take it quasi-seriously. It's always some kind of growth or some kind of improvement. So I thought maybe we would take the coming weeks and look at some ideas about growing, particularly in our life with God. So, before I get too far into that, I want to maybe give you some principles. And if you want to write these down, you can. And if you don't want to, I'd encourage you anyway, because it would be very helpful, okay? Here's some things for us to kind of consider as we kind of come at this idea and our word of the month as far as to grow. Principle number 1. Churches grow when people grow. We want to see people take steps forward. We want to see the church take steps forward. Well, you know what? The churches tend to take steps forward when people take steps forward. You with me? Churches grow when the people of those churches are growing themselves. And so that's a principle that we want to kind of hold on to and kind of put out there. Churches grow when people grow. Churches get deeper when people get deeper. The faith of a church gets stronger as the faith of the people is getting stronger. You follow me? Those who are awake, do you follow me? A yes will do. Thank you. Okay. Principle number 1 is churches grow when people grow. 2, growth in the Bible is the expectation, not just a suggestion. 2 Peter 3:18 says, grow in the grace and the knowledge of the Lord Jesus. It's not a suggestion. It's not even a good encouragement. It's more than that. It is the expectation. The Scriptures expect us to grow in our life with God. This isn't news, right? It's not news. 3rd principle. Growth involves discomfort. When we grow, there is discomfort. Look, I think it was Rick Warren said, there is no growth without change. Would you agree? There's no change without loss of something. Would you agree? And there's no loss without pain. Therefore, if we really want to grow, we have to understand that there are pains that come with growing. That's simply the way it is. There's no growth without change. There's no change without loss. There's no loss without some pain. If we want to grow, there will be some pain. Might as well put it right out there. Next. What am I on now? Is that 3? 4? Am I on number 4? Okay, let's go. Number 4. Change usually does not just happen. It's not a matter that we just kind of going along our way and all of a sudden, oh wow, I've really grown. No, growth comes with intention. Growth comes when we put some pursuit and practice together to get us further forward, to get us a little bit deeper, to make us a little bit better. That's how growth comes. It doesn't just happen. It comes about when we decide to grow. One more. Growth with God brings growth in life. It isn't just bottled up into one little thing like I've kind of got this carefully segmented and compartmentalized life. So here's my life with God and I'm going to grow there. It has a way of touching every other part of our lives. So growth with God is always tied to growth in life. Those who grow in their own life with God get better at relationships. Did you know that? Those who grow with God in their life with God get better at dealing with problems. Those who grow with God get wiser. Growth with God touches other parts of our lives. And those are my 5 principles. That's almost like a sermon in and of itself, isn't it? And that's just the introduction. He's just getting warmed up. For us this month, we're going to talk about growing. And I'm going to offer you this premise now to start. We grow in our life with God when there's some sort of change of perspective, or, if you want to put it this way, when there's a little more clarity. Gaining clarity has a way of triggering us to grow. When something comes clear that wasn't clear before, when a perspective and a way of looking at something is made a little bit different, then that kind of triggers us to grow. And when those things don't happen, we kind of stagnate and stay where we are. You understand? When there is a change of the way I see something, or if there's a change in something coming more clearly to me, then that triggers me to grow. So what I want to do this morning is talk a little bit about gaining some clarity that could maybe be a trigger for us to grow. Have you had those moments or times that brought a certain kind of clarity? That brought a new kind of clarity or maybe a little different perspective? Let me share with you 2 of them. I don't want to talk too much about myself. Oh, who am I fooling? Sure I do. But I do want to lift out a couple of things. There were points of clarity for me that moved me to do some growing. First one's kind of recent, just been in the last year. I was taking a class, and they had as our project for the class to put together a personal development plan. And I thought, okay, great. I'll throw something together and see if they'll accept it. So I did some work on temperament, particularly my temperament type. And I looked through, and as I was kind of reading and considering as far as my own life, I saw that there were some things in me that were clearly weaknesses. I also saw that there were some things that made me vulnerable to all sorts of different kinds of failure or temptation. I also saw that there were strengths, listen to me, there were strengths that I had, at least that I counted them as strengths, that nonetheless led to, how do I want to say this? I never examined them because I just thought they were strengths, and I never considered what those strengths how they might affect other people, because I saw it as a strength all the time. You with me? We tend to not examine our strengths because they come to us and we see them as strengths. But what was happening at times is that some of the things that I counted as a strength wound up sometimes dinging other people. I'm energized by ideas. That's a strength, I think. Particularly energized by my ideas. Which means if I'm not careful, I'll run over somebody else's idea because I'm so energized by mine. Do you understand what I'm saying? I get really fired up about my ideas. There may be some other people and their ideas, and if I'm not careful, I'll blow past them or bowl them over because I'm energized by my strength of being energized by my idea. Now, that was a project that I was doing, and I came across in my reading a question that I'd never asked before because I'd been blind to it. And here was the question. What is life like on the other side of me? I just always was into my own deal. Never occurred to how it might affect other people or how other people experience me. And so, over the past few days, to some friends and family, I've been sending some weird requests because I want to grow. And here's what I've asked them. I get caught up in my perception of myself. I'd like to know what life is like on the other side of me. What people experience from me, because it may not be the same thing that I'm perceiving. You follow me? You follow me? That piece of clarity, that what other people experience from me versus what I perceive about myself, I hope is going to trigger some growth. You may want to ask that question of some people in your life. What's it like on the other side of me? That tied into another point of clarity for me, and this was a couple of years ago. I was taking a walk. This is in Elkhart. I was taking a walk at Walker Park. It was a beautiful park, had a nice, appropriate name, had a nice walking track around it. And I would sometimes go there in the evening just to walk and to sort my thoughts. And I was thinking through a bunch of stuff. And the thought kind of came across my mind, and it was, what does God see when He looks at my life? I'm always looking at my life, and it's kind of myopic. You know what I mean? It's like right there in front of me, and that's what I see. It's really horizontal. I don't really see sometimes, don't look a lot from a more vertical view at my life. And sometimes it's rather knot-hole-ish. You know what I mean? Like you're watching the parade through the knothole and you only see certain things, you know, and there's all this other stuff that's there that you don't see because you're just staring at it. And I realized that I was that way with my life. And so that thought came to me, what does God see when He looks at my life? And that stopped me. I'd never considered it. I was always busy seeing my life from my view. Never stopped to think what God might see. Have you ever thought that? Ever wondered? What? Your life that God sees, and how that might be very different from the life that you see. Those are the things I think that could trigger some growth. When we look at our life with some different eyes, maybe through other people's experience of us, but also through the eyes of God, and what does He see? I didn't forget about our text. It's Psalm 139, if you want to turn there with me. It's going to be the first 6 verses. Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I get up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down. You are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there's a word on my tongue, you know it all. You've enclosed me from behind and ahead. You laid your hand on me. Such knowledge is too wonderful. It's too high. I can't quite attain to that. What's the you? And what about your life as far as that God sees? Kind of want to move instead of the what does God see to what God does see in your life based on Psalm 139. In the first verse, we see God sees our lives. He sees your life in terms of what matters, namely that you matter. He searched you. He's examined you closely. Why? Because you hold interest to Him. You hold something of interest to Him that He wants to know. You matter to Him. Now, at some level, we all kind of say, yeah, I know. We all matter to God. But can I dig in on that just a minute? There's a whole lot of folks in the world to whom I don't matter. There's a whole lot of folks in the world to whom you don't matter. Don't we all feel better now? There's a lot of folks that I know that in all reality, I don't really matter much to them. There are some folks that I so want to matter to, but I don't. But every now and again, you come upon someone and you do matter to them, and you know you matter to them. And that's sublime, isn't it? My grandma Fultz, I never wondered whether I mattered to her. She's out in the hills of Kentucky, got stacks of newspapers once a week because that's all they'd deliver to her. And you know what she would do? She'd go through the paper. And anywhere that I or my siblings were mentioned, honor roll or this for band or that for homecoming, it was cut out and it was treasured by her. And I always knew that I mattered to her. And I could not matter to a whole lot of people precisely because I knew I mattered to her. The psalm says God searched you and known you. You know why? Because you matter to Him. And when that gets from the head to the heart, that's a sublime thing. And those of us that may sometimes go through life and wonder if we matter or who we might matter to, just know this. You matter to the Most High God, and nothing trumps that. When God sees your life, when He looks at you and your life, He looks at you in terms of someone who matters to Him. We got that? Here's another that I see in Psalm 139. He looks at our lives. He looks at my life and your life. Listen, in ways that make sense. He sees, is that me? He sees my life. He sees your life in terms that make sense. I happened upon this deal at Facebook, and it was fascinating to me, and I wanted to have you all see it if you haven't. And I asked Shirley just before service if she had that for us. And do you have that for us, Shirley? Have you seen this? Take a look. besides the whale sounds in the background. Isn't that amazing? That's genius. And when you walk around and from virtually any other angle, all you're going to see is junk. And I thought about that a lot. And I thought, you know what? Sometimes we look at our own lives and it looks really junked up. And we can't make sense of what's in there and why and what causes us to do certain things and what causes us to feel certain things and what causes us to react in certain ways. And yet what God sees is He sees it in a way that makes sense. When He sees my life, when He looks at your life, He sees it in terms of the things that make sense. So when I grow with Him, there's more parts of my life that start to make sense, that didn't make sense before, and that I thought was just junk. That was a powerful thing for me to watch, particularly in that idea and in that frame to say, God sees my life in a way that makes sense. Anyone have reactions to certain things that kind of come up and you're not sure why you react that way? God knows why. It makes sense to Him. Do you ever have exchanges that leave you feeling a certain way and then you wonder, why does this have this effect on me? And you don't know why, and it doesn't make sense. It does make sense to God. In his book, The Fifth Discipline, Peter Senge talks about deep causation. Meaning sometimes there's some things that are very, very deep kinds of things. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's early child kinds of experiences. Maybe there's other kinds of things that go on that are deep causes that we don't always recognize, that we only live at the surface. But there's some deep causation that goes on and that we don't understand. But God does. It makes sense to Him. He sees my life in a way that makes sense. The struggles I have, the strengths I have, the wounds I have, the joys that I have, so much of what I don't understand about me. Psalm says He's intimately acquainted with me. He sees my life in a way that makes sense. One more. God sees my life in terms of purpose, in terms of a particular mission or meaning. In verse 5 of the verses that we read from Psalm 139, it has this interesting phrase that says, "You've put your hand on me." Now in the scripture, the idea of God putting His hand on someone has about 3 different ways that it can go. And they all end in ECT. I don't know, it just kind of happens that way. God will put His hand on someone to protect them. My hand's on you. You're all right. You're safe. And that's the way that the scriptures use it. Sometimes He'll put His hand on someone, sort of like we would as a parent, to correct them. So the hand on someone is to, nope, we're not doing this. But sometimes God puts His hand on people to direct them. This is not just the way, this is what I have for you. This is what I want from you. This is your purpose. When God looks at our life, here's what He sees. He sees a purpose for us. I've given you this. I'm showing you the way. This is your purpose. Okay. I know some of God's purpose for you. I know some of God's purpose for you. You want to know what it is? It's kind of a secret between me and God. Part of God's purpose for you is this, that you would be one. Listen, you would be someone who knows that you matter to God. That's part of His purpose. His purpose is for you to progressively understand that knowing Him more deeply helps you make sense of your own life. That's His purpose for you, is someone who's able to make sense of their life. And the last part of it is, His mission for you is to come alongside someone else who doesn't know that they matter to God. To come alongside someone else who can't make sense of their life because they don't know God. And maybe, just maybe, help them know that they do matter to God. And that He can make sense of their life. We grow. The start point, the trigger point for growth is gaining some clarity. And we gain clarity about life, I think, when we start to see our lives the way God sees our life. That triggers us to grow. And I'll leave you with that.